The intersection of high tech stalking and domestic violence. A conversation with Kevin Dorsey of OurFamilyWizard.com. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact dependent. Hey everyone, this is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland. And together with us,
I'm Kevin Dorsey, Senior Professional Liaison with Our Family Wizard.
Yes, and we're glad to have Kevin back. He had done a recent interview with us on introducing our family wizard to our audience, especially to those people who are co-parents and the professionals who deal with them, whether they be lawyers or judges, um, amicus, mediators, co-parent facilitators. There's so many people who work in that quote unquote industry. And so, like I had said last episode, ourfamilywizard.com, that app is a tool that I've been using. Well, not me personally, but my clients have been using for many years. And it's something that is a go to standard when it comes to co parenting and helping parents resolve their disputes. It's, in essence, a communication tool. And so, we have Kevin back to discuss something a little bit different, but it's still related to the topic of co-parenting conflict. And that is the issue of being stalked or being tracked, especially in cases where there's domestic violence. Natalia and I, being family law attorneys, we deal all the time with cases where one person is abused by somebody else, or where the allegation is made and it's not necessarily true. And regardless whether or not uh, family violence is in fact occurring, there are tools in place that can help mitigate the damages. But there are other tools in place that are used nefariously, that are used negatively. And so, Kevin, being an expert on our Family Wizards app and a bunch of different tools that relate to interpersonal family conflicts, he's here to talk a little bit about that phenomenon of tracking people with electronic devices. So, Kevin, can you give us a general overview of what tends to happen these days in this field of tracking people, legally or illegally?
Yeah, thanks, Mac. Thanks, Natalia. Thanks for having me. So I think what's important to know is, the technology piece, that's not the evil part, right? Um, it's evil people using technology to do bad things. So, technology is an amazing thing. It's allowing us to talk through the computer right now and send this podcast out to people's ears all around the world. I've got my Fitbit on that tracks my steps, and tells me what time it is. So technology is a great thing, but unfortunately, as it's evolved, people find ways to use it in nefarious different ways and different applications. So today we're going to be specifically talking about certain ways, typically in domestic violence cases or cases with harassment, that people use technology to stalk their co-parent or their ex. So one of the big things to look out for is spyware. And spyware needs to be installed on your phone or on your computer. How that happens, the person needs access to your phone. So a lot of times, co-parents know each other's passwords. They know a number they would use for their phone. Maybe they take the phone and do a face scan while the other person's sleeping to get it open. So they do need access to the phone in order to install spyware. Another way of doing it is called bluejacking, where they use Bluetooth to do it. Now, this has become less prevalent because at the iPhone 6 and beyond, I believe starting with the 6 and Android 6, they encrypted Bluetooth. So once you get to that point, it's not really an issue. Problem is, a lot of domestic violence shelters get donated phones, And so a woman in a domestic violence shelter might be given an iPhone 5 or an iPhone 4. So this is something to be aware of. How it works is you use a Bluetooth sniffer, which takes the Bluetooth range from 50 feet to like 25 miles. And I can basically look for other people's Bluetooths that are open and install spyware that way. Okay, so that's one thing to be aware of. Now, what spyware can do, they can listen to your calls, they can see what you're doing on your phone, and they can also turn the mic or camera on without you knowing it. Now, there's been developments there as well, so the companies keep catching up with these things. So if you have a newer phone, you'll see, for example, on the iPhone, when your audio is on or your camera's on, there's an indicator light now that appears. So it's letting you know this app is using the microphone. This app is using your video. That's relatively new. So some of the older models don't have that. So in these cases, so how do you know spyware is on your phone? If your co-parent is showing up to places that they shouldn't know you're at, if they know private details of private conversations that they shouldn't know, that's one indicator. A lot of times the phone will be hot to the touch because it's working in the background. So you might touch your phone and you haven't been using it, but it's hot. Another example to look for is data usage. So there's going to be increased data usage because the phone's being activated and a lot of times sending data to your ear and their ear at the same time. So you could go to your phone records and see that increased data. Now, how do you get rid of spyware? So let's say you figured out, I'm pretty sure I have it on my phone. You can bring it to an authorized cell phone dealer, not a kiosk at a mall. We're talking like a brick and mortar place. They have a very expensive piece of software that can detect spyware. You can also bring it to law enforcement. Some law enforcement have that as well. Now, the key is, let's say you delete it. What if it's in your iCloud and it reinstalls? So some people will just get a new phone. They won't install their iCloud and they'll just start over from scratch. So hopefully you can delete it, or you can get a new phone and start over from scratch. Another option and a tip I'll give is using Google Voice. So Google Voice, you can make phone calls through and you can change your phone number each time. So if I have a history of domestic violence with my co-parent, I could, instead of calling them from my phone, use Google Voice and use a different number each time I call. So that is kind of a quick overview of spyware.
And thanking you for that. I know that there are many other ways where someone's privacy or even intimacy can be infringed by the abuser. And the potential perpetrators can do a lot of harm by that. I've heard of things like spoof calling and spoof texting. Can you tell us something more what it is and what harm it does?
Yeah, so when I present this in person, and just to give you some background on this, how I learned all this stuff, we have a technology expert on our staff named Stephen Bradley. And he worked with domestic violence coalitions. He's worked with the FBI on domestic violence topics. And so he created this presentation. It can be done in a half-day format, a full-day format. So we're trying to fit a lot of information into the short time we have here. But just to let you know, we do offer a whole class on this. So you can reach out to me, Kevin, at OurFamilyWizard.com if you'd like to get the CLE. Now, when we do that presentation, I actually show an app called, let me see my notes here. It is called Spoof Card. So spoofing, SPOOF, is basically changing or manipulating your location, the caller ID, your voice, and things like that. So that's what we mean when we say spoofing. And what I can use Spoof Card to do, let's say I call you, it's an app on my phone, I download it for free. I put a few bucks into it to get calling minutes. So I could call Natalia and I could type in Mac's number. So it looks like Mac's calling her. So she says, oh, Mac's calling me. She picks it up and it could be me talking. I could also manipulate my voice to be a woman's voice. I could change the background sound to make it sound like I'm on an airplane or I'm at a casino. So that's spoof calling. How that's used in these domestic violence cases is if my co-parent's not taking my calls, I could put her sister's number in. So she's going to pick up the call thinking her sister's calling, and then it's me. Okay, so that's spoof calling. It can also be done through text, it can be done through email. Um, so, how do you detect this? If there's a pattern of spoof calling, what you would do, you go to the phone records. Because how it works is if I call Natalia with a spoof call with Mac's number, my phone actually calls a call center. The call center calls Natalia. So when you go to Natalia's phone records, the number that shows up is going to be that call center's. It's not going to be Mac's. It's not going to be mine. You're going to see that call center's number. And so you'd be able to go to those phone records and create a trend, create a pattern of this 800 number calling you.
Sorry, I was on mute there for a second. I said very interesting. It almost sounds like some people have just too much time on their hands. I mean, if you're really out to try to mess somebody's life up by calling them via another number that's not yours and changing your voice, I mean, we're getting into creepy territory, right? I mean, unfortunately, though, people do these kind of things. And we see it in family violence cases. Just recently, share my screen. We were having a talk with another mediator and attorney out here in Texas, and this was an episode that we did. And the question was, can I track my children when they visit the other parent? Because this is something that some parents justify to spy on the other parent by using the kids as pretext. Okay, they may say that the kid's unsafe or whatever, and so they might throw something in their bag or whatever, with the goal being to try to locate the whereabouts of the other parent. And so people who are interested in that episode can go and you know check it out. But it's just something that happens and it keeps happening. So can you I know you can speak a little bit about AirTags. I know we're skipping
Mhm.
around from your notes,
Okay.
but
Fine.
because that connects to AirTags in
Mhm.
Tile, and Samsung recently came out with the I forget what they're called. They're basically like little pods that you can
Mhm.
buy from the Samsung store, and they work with your Galaxy phones, and people will throw them in a kid's bag or put
Mhm.
them in a car, engine block or in the trunk in order to track the other person. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yep. Again, designed for a good purpose, right? I don't want to lose my wallet. I don't want to lose my keys. So I attach an Apple AirTag to it or a tile. So if I leave them at the library, I leave them at the mall. Basically, a network of people who are connected to Tile and connected to Apple AirTags through Bluetooth will say, "Oh, your keys are here." So that's great. Unfortunately, people are again using this in a negative way where there's a Snapchat video that went viral of a young woman who got home from the bar and found an Apple AirTag in her purse that wasn't there
Mm.
before.
Wow.
So someone slipped it into her purse to be able to track her. In the family law world, in these cases where there's domestic violence, stalking, harassment, maybe I tape one to the underside of your car, maybe I slip one in your purse, or like you said, that's really interesting, putting it in the kid's bag. So it's just something to be aware of. If someone knows your location and shouldn't, it's probably a good time to look to see if maybe an AirTag's attached, or if something got slipped into a bag or something like that.
And after hearing that, I can't withhold. I need to ask, what would be the general tips for the parents to avoid this situation and to
Mhm.
resolve them if they happen?
Yep. So the Apple AirTags one's harder because it's just a device, so you really need to find it to get rid of it. Going back to things like spyware, things like keystroke tracking. What I'd say is, if you want to make sure you have a private conversation and you think spyware might be on your phone, leave your phone in your car. So if I'm going to go talk to my attorney, let's not have our phones in this room. That way we know they can't listen. Other tips: turn airplane mode on so that the data gets disconnected. Okay, so that's one. Um, Another one, turn your phone off completely. Um, the only way to ensure you're having a private conversation is to make sure you're totally disconnected from data and airplane mode's turned on. Um, Other things we could get into, things like getting antivirus on your phone. So we think about antivirus for our computers all the time, but do you have an antivirus on your phone? Do you use a VPN? So things like that, where we often don't think about having that, but we should probably have an antivirus on our phone, and maybe use a VPN as well.
Yeah. And VPN, for folks who are not familiar, is basically a tool that helps you change your IP address so that it doesn't show that where you're located or the general area where you're located. I've used it when I've traveled to Poland, for example, so that I can make sure that American servers think that I am sitting in the US. And I use that for good business purposes, right? But I could see why of how some people might try to disguise their IP addresses, maybe escape responsibility when the
Mhm.
authorities start tracking, because authorities sometimes look up IP addresses when they're trying to pinpoint locations. So let's talk about our Family Wizard as a
Mhm.
resource
Yep.
and how it connects to all of this. Can you?
Yep.
I'll share my screen as well while you're talking. For anybody who's listening to the podcast, be sure to check out the YouTube version on the Lawyers and Mediators YouTube channel.
Yeah. So what I'll mention, our Family Wizard co-parenting app, specifically designed for helping parents communicate that are going through a divorce or separation. How does it apply to this conversation we just had? It's a closed system, so there's no way to spoof your location. There's date and time stamps on read receipts for messages. Things lock, like on the calendar after the events happened, it locks from editing. You can't delete messages. So a lot of families that are in this situation would like to communicate through here, or survivors of domestic violence like communicating through our Family Wizard, because they can communicate safely. Now, other advantages: if I'm in OFW, I can communicate with my co-parent without revealing my phone number, email, or address. So oftentimes they've moved, they've gotten a new phone, they've changed their email. This allows them to communicate safely without revealing any of that information. I can also talk about pictures. So when you upload a picture to our Family Wizard, it strips out the geotag. What's a geotag? So a geotag is metadata that's printed basically in the background of a picture. So if you go to a picture and click get more info, a lot of times it's going to give you the longitude and latitude of that picture. Now that's something DSLR cameras do. If you have your location services on your phone, it's going to automatically include that info. So that's one of my other tips. If you're using pictures and posting on social media, make sure you have your location services turned off so that it's not uploading that stamp of the longitude and latitude. But no, when you're uploading pictures in our Family Wizard, it strips that geotagging data. Um, Also, we have something called check-ins we talked about on the last episode, where a parent could opt in to sharing their location for the time being. So a lot of times they're meeting up at a police department to do an exchange. They could check in to show they were there at that date and time, and even attach a picture of where that uh, custody exchange or time exchange, child time exchange is happening.
Awesome. That's a very important tool. And then the check-in was actually something that's relatively new, correct?
Yep. So that's new. There's also a new template for the parenting schedules. So if they want to Use one of the standard templates, 223, every other week, every other weekend. There's a standard possession order in Texas. Mac, I know you're working in Texas. So just trying to make everyone's lives easier, lower the emotions, raise the logic, remove the pressure. And the big thing is getting the children out of the middle. So our goal is to help families living separately thrive, getting the children out of the middle. And that's my mission with my work, is the child focus piece. And a lot of times, we don't talk enough about that. The parents kind of become spotlighted in these cases, but really it's about getting the children into a safe, positive situation where they can thrive.
Absolutely. And before we close, could you speak a little bit about the benefits this gives to mediators?
Yeah, so specifically for mediators, once you've come to an agreement, how do you ensure success once that agreement's signed? So this is a tool in your toolkit, along with, and I said this on the other episode, it's along with parenting education, mental health therapy, maybe coaching, or something like SoberLink. We're a tool in your toolbox that you can apply. They don't have to use every feature. They could just use it for expenses. They could just use it for messages or calendar. But what you need to do is put Our Family Wizard in the agreement. So you're going to write it into the agreement saying, the family is going to exclusively communicate through Our Family Wizard unless it's an emergency. They're going to link up with neutrals like amicus attorneys, like mental health therapists, so they can monitor the communication. Tell them to renew each year until the kid turns 18, or until things get better, till they petition the court otherwise in litigation. And really just spelling out the use of it within that mediation agreement and getting both parties on board. Now, it's your job as the mediator to kind of sell this to them, right? I'm selling it to you now, giving you all the pluses of Our Family Wizard. And then it's going to be your job to say, hey, you guys are struggling with pickups and drop-offs. Why don't you use Our Family Wizard's calendar? And, like I said in the last episode too, it should pay for itself over and over again. It's $100 per year per parent. We also offer a fee waiver, but if they're using it, it should be one of those time savers, money savers down the road.
And thank you for that, because this conversation was pretty important. That really has two sides. First of all, sometimes people will think they are doing an innocent thing, putting a little tile or something like that into the kid's bag, or just listening to a conversation. Isn't it anything bad? What people don't understand is that it is a very serious intervention into someone's privacy that can escalate the conflict to the level that people are unaware of. And on the other hand side, the in family violence cases or any kind of abuse, this is a controlling feature. And even after the relationship is over, because someone wanted to break free because of those control being a mechanism built into the relationship, this control from the abusers wishes to exist and doesn't cease to exist. So anybody who might have any just any doubts whether it is or it is not is welcome to go and check their devices. Anybody who is really uncertain about it is welcome to have legal advice on that. But I believe that, Kevin, you can be a useful resource to any sort of practitioners with, as you said, either half day or even a full day training on all of that, because the more knowledge and awareness we all have, the better the situation of potential victims can be. And with that, I want to thank you so much for finding time to join us here today for the conversation on the intersection of high-tech stalking and domestic violence. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you soon and speak to you soon on one of our podcasts on some other topic.
And Kevin, a quick question.
Mhm.
As far as we know, when a photo is put on Facebook, that geo metadata is still there, right?
I think Facebook now strips it. So that, I'm not an expert on that, so I'd have to defer, but from what I remember, it used to include it. And
Yeah,
like I said, with other tech, they've kind of caught up and they strip it, but don't quote me on that. That's something you'd have to research on your own. But I
sure.
do believe a lot of the social media is aware and is starting to move towards stripping the location data from.
Correct. Because
But
otherwise,
unfortunately, a lot of people just share their location anyways, right? They want
exactly.
people to know where they are. So that's
Yeah.
another thing to be aware of, maybe not including that.
Yeah. Because I was just imagining a family victim who posts on a public Facebook feed
Mhm.
and accidentally, leaves, put up pictures up that has data in there
Yep.
so that the abuser could find it. But our family wizard will, you know, keep you from having sleepless nights because it will solve the problem, period. Because you thought about that originally as a
Mhm.
potential problem that could be abused. So that's what
Exactly.
I appreciate about it. And thank you so much for it all.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye bye.